Welcome friends to our fifth and final video about Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, if you haven't seen our other videos already, we did 2 videos about our climb up Kilimanjaro vlogs, and then we had an info guide, everything you need to know about climbing Kilimanjaro, as well as a packing video. So go check those out if you haven't seen them already. Links are in the description. And
now it's time for the Q&A, where we're going to answer all of your guys' remaining questions. But before we get started, if you aren't subscribed already, click that button, click that bell so you'll be notified when all our new videos come out.
All right, so kicking it off with one of the most popular questions we got. What is the bathroom situation like? Are there toilets at regular intervals?
So when you're hiking on the trail, as we mentioned in our packing guide, you bring your own toilet paper, a little baggie, and a hand sanitizer with you because there aren't toilets when you are hiking from camp to camp. So you're just going off on the side of the trail. Now, in the first couple of days, this isn't too much of a problem because there's still trees and bushes. But the thing is that everybody kind of uses the same spots for the toilets. So these spots become very gross. Very gross.
Very gross.
And then later on the hike, when there isn't any more bushes or trees, you just kind of go behind a rock and just do your stuff. And everyone knows what you're doing. I definitely stepped in human feces. I've definitely peed on myself.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, so you know, we would empty our toilet paper bag in the big garbage bag at camp. When you get to camp, there's 2 options. Each camp, you're not allowed to go to the washroom just anywhere at camp. You have to use a designated toilet. There is a public toilet, which are just long drops, so outhouses. We never got the experience of using that because our tour provider actually provides private toilets. So this is a chemical toilet, and a lot of good tour providers will provide that for you. And oh my goodness, it is a luxury and it is a very nice feature. How long were you guys at the summit, and is there much to see up there?
The summit, we were there for about 15-20 minutes maybe, and I think that's pretty typical. You don't want to spend too long up there because your body's not used to the altitude. The more time you spend up there, the more likely it is you might start suffering some altitude sickness symptoms. So yeah, 15-20 minutes, about that. Just enough time to see the sign, get a photo, get engaged, you know, no big deal.
No big deal.
And then, is there much to see?
Just amazing clouds.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the weather. We had an incredible sunset, probably the best sunset I've ever seen in my life. And you could see sunrise. We had the most incredible sunrise. You could see Mount Meru off in the distance. It's really pretty. There's a glacier up there, and you can see into the crater of the volcano. Would you recommend it for solo travelers, or is it better to have someone you know with you?
So in our group, we joined an open group, and that's an option for many people. And there was a solo traveler in our open group. And basically, like any other group that you would join as a solo traveler, you just become one of the groups. So you're always around other people. There's lots of company. You become like best friends because you're spending a lot of time together in a short period of time. So it's a really great option for solo travelers. Now, you do have the option of doing a private group. So like if you wanted to just hire your own crew and go up by yourself, you can, but you're never gonna be alone on Mount Kilimanjaro because you can't just go up by yourself. That's the rules of this particular mountain. So you'll always be surrounded by people. But I wouldn't really, if I was going solo, I would definitely go with an open group though. I wouldn't want to just hire.
Yeah, experience with other people. Share the experience with other people doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, I saw another person asking about the sleeping situation if you're a solo person. So you can request that you have a tent to yourself, but with our tour provider at least, there was an extra additional charge to a one-time fee to have a tent to yourself. Now, since we were an odd number of hikers in our group, it just worked out that the solo person in our group had a tent to himself because there was nobody else to share it with.
Now that you've climbed Kilimanjaro, do you have a plan, or would you like to climb any of the other 7 peaks? If so, which one?
No plans, I guess. But I think the next logical one would be Aconcagua.
Yes.
It's a little bump up in elevation, but it's not so technical and difficult that someone with a little bit of experience can still safely do if you go with a guide, a tour company.
Yeah, like a good tour company. Or that one in Australia, Kuzia.
It'd be cool to do. It's only, I think, like 2,000 meters or something.
Yeah, you can do it in like a day. I'm sure there's a lot of Australians here that have done that mountain. Have you done it? Maybe. Let us know in the comments. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on hiking that one.
So if you could have changed anything about your experience, what would it have been?
My stress levels. So anxious and stressed about the summit. I went through a lot of various emotional ups and downs throughout the hike of feeling confident, feeling not so confident, and just kind of like doubting whether I'm not going to make it, having to accept if I wasn't going to make it to the summit. But on the actual summit day, so day 5, the long crazy day that started at Karonga camp, I was just so stressed. As soon as we got to base camp, I was just so stressed that entire day. I couldn't sleep any of the like sleep times we were supposed to sleep. Mind you, it was like the middle of the afternoon. But I was just so worried about this summit that I wasn't able to like really enjoy my time at base camp or just relax, try to sleep, because I was just so stressed out about how am I going to do? How is this summit attempt going to happen? But stressing and giving yourself anxiety of it is not going to help you. And that was honestly probably my one regret.
I don't think there's anything that I would have changed about my experience.
Maybe going to the washroom at Stella Point.
Actually, yeah. Maybe going to the washroom at Stella Point before we started heading towards Uhuru, because
Stella Point is your last washroom spot before you get to the summit. After that, it's just open glacier and nowhere to hide.
And the sun came up, so it was bright. Nowhere to hide.
Nowhere to hide.
So this is a good one. Do the tour companies accommodate for vegans, vegetarians, or other dietary restrictions?
This might not be true for all tour providers, but our provider was amazing. So in our group of 7 hikers, we had 2 vegans, 2 vegetarians, 1 gluten-free, and then 2 omnivores, just normal dietary requirements. And they were so accommodating. It was ridiculous. They would make the lady who was gluten-free, she would get her own huge platter of foods. Whenever we were sitting in the food thing, she'd have her own platters brought to her. So much food, she could never finish it all, because I mean all of it was so much food. All the vegans, vegetarians, we'd all get our own there'd be like a big veggie dish, a big curry dish. They were so accommodating. Like they always were making sure that we would have vegetarian and vegan food, and there was so much food. And then because there was only 2 people actually eating meat, because even the gluten-free, like the lady that was gluten-free, she didn't eat meat either. So there was so much meat.
Yeah. Honestly, they were so accommodating.
Yeah.
And even it got to a point where me and the other guy who were eating meat, our stomachs were a little off, and we didn't have fresh meat at this time. It was a few days old. And so we just asked the cook that we didn't want to eat meat that night. And he was like, no problem, totally understand. We'll make something different.
Food. So any food that we didn't eat, the rest of the porters, the rest of the crew, they would just eat it, because everything gets used up on the mountains. And then they would do like a supply run about, I think it was like day 4 or something.
I think it was day 4.
Yeah, day 4 they did a supply run, and so we got more fresh fruits and food brought up. I don't know, it was just like
and some fairly elaborate meals.
Very elaborate
meals.
I
was pretty impressed at what they could create up on the mountain. They even baked us a cake.
Yeah, they baked us a cake to celebrate. Pick a good tour provider that says, like, in their outlines that they accommodate vegan, vegetarian requests. That's the best thing that you can do, and then you're gonna be set for the whole mountain.
The only thing I would recommend is make sure you tell your tour provider ahead of time, like when you're booking.
Full list of costs, prices for the tour, etc. So we kind of touched a bit on the costs in the info guide, where we broke down the different routes and why we chose each route, and more of like the various other costs that you would expect. But this is kind of a very quick, rough, approximate amount of what we spent on our trek.
Yeah, so for our 7-day Machame trek, it was $2,700 US per person. And then we spent about $300 each on tips. For the rentals, we spent about $70, $50 for the sleeping bags, $20 for our trekking poles. There were some other various gear items that we had to buy. I would estimate that we probably, including our rentals, spent about $500 each in gear. And then of course your flights will be on top of that. And the cost of your flight's gonna vary a lot depending on where you're coming from in the world. But ours were around $1,500, I believe, coming from Canada.
Yeah, but we flew into Kenya because we did the safari.
The safari
first. So it varies depending on where you are. The flights are probably going to be pretty pricey.
I'd estimate our total trip cost was approximately $5,000 per person. And considering you have like almost 30 people in your crew that you're employing, working for you, carrying your stuff up the mountain, like,
pretty cool.
Yeah. What day did you find the most physically or mentally challenging?
Physically, I found day...
I feel like they're the same day.
Yeah, they're the same day, but it's not the day that you think it is. For me, honestly, it was day 2. Day 2 was the most physically and mentally exhausting for me.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, I'm sure about that. Because day 2 was the one day I had altitude, like I was feeling the altitude. So I was getting headaches and lightheadedness. It's also the day that I started crying on the mountain. Mind you, I was crying a bit on the summit too. But those happy tears, not like, why did I agree and pay a lot of money to do this? Day 2 was like where I was like really genuinely questioning why I chose to spend all this money and come all this way to hike this mountain. Because I was really struggling with climbing because there was a lot of big boulders on day 2. So it was leaving me really out of breath. And I think that's why I was having a lot of issues with the altitude, because I was constantly trying to like catch my breath and get over these boulders. And then once I was on the summit, I was just like in a zone. Like I honestly don't even remember the trek because I was just like in the zone of just like 1, 2, 1, 2.
What about the descent though? That was brutal.
Oh, that was just brutal. That would be physically. Never mind, I changed it. That would be the most physically challenging because my knees were killing me on the descent.
Yeah, everybody's knees were, it's rough.
It was
yeah,
very
so much
rough.
impact going down for so many hours. I mean, definitely summit, because I found all the other days were relatively straightforward, relatively easy hikes. It was only summit that was tough, struggling with lack of sleep and just built up exhaustion over so many days of being on the mountain and not really getting great sleeps any of the other nights either. And then hiking through the cold. It was so cold on summit night. We were all just frozen to the bone.
If someone has altitude sickness, do they need to stop for the rest of the trip?
Not a simple question, because it kind of depends on the situation. It depends on how severe your symptoms of altitude sickness are. If they're just mild headaches and maybe a little loss of appetite, it might not be that big of a deal. You can just keep proceeding and monitoring how you're feeling. And if it does get worse, you might have to go down. But essentially, the guides are monitoring your blood oxygen saturation and your pulse on a daily basis. They're asking you questions. They're looking in your eyes and having conversations with you to get an idea of how you're feeling. And the guides will make that call. If the symptoms are severe enough, if you have extremely bad headaches, you're dizzy, you're acting like you're drunk, they might choose to take you down, send you down the mountain with one of the guides or a porter or something like that.
They pretty much have to.
Yeah.
Like when you get to a certain point, they have to send you down.
For
and
sure.
You sign that paper saying that like you are going to listen to these guides. We touch on this in our info video about why picking certain routes is really important to help with altitude sickness. But essentially, when you get it past a point, you're going down. That's it. That's the end of your trek. And it doesn't matter how much money you spent. You're not going to get a refund. That is the reality of high altitude mountaineering.
But a lot of the times, the minor altitude sickness symptoms, they might start to subside as you spend more time on the mountain and as your body adjusts. So if they're only minor symptoms, you just kind of wait, feel it out, see how it progresses. It might get better, it might get worse. Everybody's different.
Were the tents already set up for you when you arrived at camp, and were sleeping mats provided?
So yes, to both of those. Essentially, after we left our previous camp, we would start hiking to our next camp. And then shortly after we left, our crew would pack everything up, all of our tents, equipment, everything, and they would put all that on their backs and then run up the mountain and pass us at some point, get to the next camp, probably a couple hours before we got there, and have everything set up by the time we got there. So when we came into camp, our tent was set up, our sleeping mats were inside, already set up, and our duffel bags with all of our stuff were in our tents waiting for us. So all we had to do was roll out our sleeping bags, essentially.
Yeah. And there would be like, so there was like a camp manager, and his job is to run ahead first thing in the morning, like before all of the like tents are even packed up, to save a spot for us. Like they don't have like designated spots. It's always just somebody running ahead and picking out a spot that all the camp's gonna be there, and then they just wait there for all the rest of the orders to.
It's first come, first served.
What did you carry in your day packs?
So most of your stuff went in your duffel bag. In your day pack, you essentially just had 3 liters of water, your rain gear at all times. Weather conditions change so fast, so it's best to always have your rain gear in your day pack. Then we would have our snacks, so just a couple granola bars or cookies or whatever we wanted to snack on. And then any sunscreen and medications. So we had our, what did we have with us? We had ibuprofen.
Just all the medications.
Yeah.
And then our toilets, like our hand
Toilet
sanitizer
paper.
and toilet paper.
Camera.
Some warm like jackets, some warm layers.
Yeah. Okay, so what didn't meet your expectations, or was there anything that disappointed you about the trip?
I would have to say the trash. So we
yeah.
talked a bit about the toilet situation and how people would leave not only their toilet paper there, but people left all kinds of other trash on the mountain, around camps, on the hike. There is a lot of garbage. Like on the summit, there's just hand warmer packs like littered on the side of the mountain. It is honestly, it was really gross. It was disappointing. It's just like every day you get to camp, you can throw out your rubbish, your garbage into their bins, and they will take it down the mountain for you. There's no reason why you should be throwing anything on the side of the mountain. The mountain should be pristine, aside from, I guess, the human waste problem, but there shouldn't be any garbage on the mountain, and there was a lot, and that really, really disappointed me. It disappointed me in just people. The guides come together and they go up the mountain just to bring down trash. Every year they do this, maybe even multiple times a year. I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know if it's a regular thing that they do,
No.
but our tour provider said that they sent a whole group of guides up the Lemosho route, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was Lemosho.
And they just hiked the route, picking up garbage as they went, and then took it all down the mountain after but they collected 2,000 pounds of garbage on that hike alone, on that route. So this one doesn't really apply to me, but what would you have done if you were on your period?
Ladies, well, I was supposed to be on my period, actually, for the hike, but what I did is I didn't want to have my period while on the mountain. So I'm on birth control, and normally with birth control you do 3 weeks of taking the pill and you do 1 week off, at least with the one I take. So if you don't take that week off and you just start a new pack right at the end of your old pack, you essentially skip your period. Now, I was told I could do that from my doctor, and you can do that after 3 months. I just did it for the one time for Kilimanjaro. It worked great, no period, awesome, handy dandy. Now, obviously, depending on what you're taking, you might not be able to do that. I would talk to your doctor, see if you can do that, but that's one option. Now, if you're not on birth control, your other options are just regular tampons and pads. Just be aware that, you're going to be changing it with no shelter later on in the mountain. So just get comfortable with that in mind. But just pack out all of your garbage, please. Just put it in a bag, throw it out when you get to camp. It's kind of gross that you're going to have to carry it with you, but that is the option. I would say Diva cups, not really applicable. You're not going to be able to clean or borrow that.
And your hands are so dirty.
And your hands are dirty.
Just from dirt and everything.
Yeah, even with tampons, I would say make sure it's a tampon with an applicator because, dirty hands. A fourth option is period panties, something I've been experimenting with and are quite a nice option, so that you don't have to deal with pads or tampons, that you just
Yeah, but you wouldn't be able to wash it on the hike.
No, you wouldn't. So you would have, I would bring a bag, like a separate bag that you can carry your dirty period panties with, and then just keep that in your luggage. But then you don't have to deal with pads or tampons or waste. So you just have to deal with really dirty underwear.
But the other thing that I would say is I remember the tour providers saying that even if you are on birth control at the time, you should have some pads or tampons anyways, because the altitude can mess with your cycle. So even if you're not expecting to have your period at that time, it might just happen.
Did the company you went with strongly recommend you take Diamox for the hike, or was it a personal choice?
It was a personal choice. So they never strongly recommended it like during the booking process or in their packing list or anything like that. But when we met our guides, they essentially just said, whatever you talk to about your doctors with, go with their advice. In their overall recommendation was to probably take the altitude sickness pills if you had them. But it was more of a personal choice for us, I would say.
Yeah.
So, did you get phone service on the hike?
Yes and no. So we didn't actually, so I was posting stories on the hike, but I actually just saved all the stories and then I posted them when we got back. But there was cell service up on it with certain providers. I believe Tigo was the best cell service. One of the guys in our group, he had cell service, and I don't know how often he had it. He had it sporadically. Like, there's certain camps that he got it a lot better than others, but there is cell service up there, so you can you could post updates to your friends and family. Another thing is that our tour provider actually was posting daily updates from our group on the mountain, so we just gave a link to the Facebook group to our friends and family so they could keep tabs on what we were actually doing and our progress up on the mountain. So that's another thing. I know some tour providers provide, but there is service if you really want it. There is service on the mountain, but you have to get a local provider, and I believe Tigo was
I think
the best.
Tigo was the best, but our guides had Vodacom sims, and Vodacom seemed to work pretty well. So
they were the ones posting to the Facebook group, so
it seemed like they had service the majority of the time on the mountain. There was definitely some dead zones, but if you want it, get a sim.
Was there anyone over 50 in your group?
Yes, there was actually. There was one lady who was there celebrating her 60th birthday. So that was super impressive. She just killed it. She did amazing.
So
it was
good.
incredible. But I also think that the oldest person to ever climb was in their 70s or 80s. I think it was 80s. So,
They're not even our group too. It's like there were other older people.
definitely in other groups.
All age range. Like really, it's all age ranges.
Yeah, there is a minimum age that you have to be to climb the mountain. I don't remember what it is now. I think it might be like 10 years old or something around there. But there's no upper age range, and there's lots of older people, seniors in their 50s, 60s, even 70s on the mountain that climb it successfully. Are the glaciers of Kilimanjaro still there, or have they all melted away?
They are still there, but they are melting away. And they predict, I don't know what year they predict they're going to be
There's different predictions. I saw 2050. Some say 2040.
Some say 2025.
Some say even earlier than that, that they predict that the glaciers will be completely melted, but it is happening. The glaciers are disappearing. But you could see in one shot of our video, you could see the glacier there. There's still glacier up on the mountain, but it is slowly disappearing.
I loved your packing video, but could we get an insight on what a guy should pack clothing-wise?
A guy should pack pretty much essentially the same thing as what Nadine packed, just all the guy versions and less bras.
Or no bras. Maybe no bras. You probably don't need those.
But I essentially, honestly, I packed the same thing Nadine packed.
Yeah, so just watch the packing video. Applicable for both sexes.
Did you feel you needed much hiking and camping experience before going?
You should have at least a hiking and camping trip under your belt, because it's 7 days of hiking and camping. So you should know if you actually enjoy hiking and camping before taking this. And
it's also a big time and financial commitment.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're getting into as well.
So I would at least do a hiking or camping trip before this. Somewhere that you hike for a couple days, at least 2 days, and you have to camp overnight where you have to like bring your gear and set up your own gear. I would say at least do something of the sort before you attempt Mount Kilimanjaro, just so you have an idea of what you can expect and if you actually enjoy it. But in regards to training, because there were a lot of training questions, again, we covered this in our info guide, but you need to be at a reasonable fitness level, but you don't need to be like
super fit.
Super fit. If you enjoy hiking, you just need to enjoy hiking for hours and hours. Like go for like a 3 hour, a 4 hour, a 5 hour hike. 'Cause that's really, aside from summit night, which is crazy, that's the most you're doing each day. And then do it like a couple days in a row.
The hikes are pretty straightforward. You're just walking up a slope. There's nothing technical about it. And you're not setting up any of the camping stuff. Like your tour provider will take care of all of that for you. So what is one thing that you wish you knew before hiking, or one piece of advice you wish you had received?
Honestly, we prepared a lot for this trip. It took us 3 months when we booked it and to prep everything, and we did so much research. We watched so many YouTube videos, we read so many blog posts, we just read and watched everything we possibly could to just get the most amount of information. And we did a lot of hiking, like just hike, and get as much information. That's the best thing that you can do, is just prepare yourself.
Like Nadine said, we researched it so much that we pretty much knew everything we were getting into before we even got there. So I would suggest you do the same thing as well, just so there's no big surprises. All right, so there's lots of questions asking if we have any interest in doing Everest or even Everest Base Camp.
Maybe not Everest, but Everest Base Camp is another hike that's actually very comparable in certain ways to Kilimanjaro. That one would be a really cool one.
Yeah.
That would be a really cool hike to go to Everest Base Camp. I think it's another 2-week trek, or just anywhere around the Himalayas. If there's any treks that you guys might have been around there, let me know down below in the comments, because that would be...
Yeah, I think just seeing the Himalayas, just having that backdrop and being in that environment would be amazing.
Yeah, but not Everest.
No, not yet.
So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and our entire Kilimanjaro series. I hope you, is this something you like? Like the breakdown of how we like plan and pack? Because we can definitely do more of them for future trips, for past trips. Just let us know down below in the comments. And
if you have any other questions that we missed or didn't get covered in this video, just ask them down in the comments and we'll be down there taking care of those.
Yeah. Till then, give this thumbs up, hit that subscribe, and we'll see you guys later.